Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the UploadVR Gamescast, not the showcase. That's a done thing. We don't need to talk about it anymore, apart from the fact we're going to spend a lot of time talking about it this week.
A lot of talking.
I am one of your hosts, Jamie Feltham, and as always, as most of the time, I am joined by my esteemed colleague and co-host, Harry Baker. How you doing?
Hello, everybody. I'm doing very well. Very well. Nice to be back after a week off last week. We couldn't fit one in because of the showcase. That was the same day. A lot going on. So I think it's good though. We've got like a week separation to kind of digest everything that happened last week.
Between me and you?
No, between the showcase and the...
Right, okay. Because the way you just pointed
There's
at me
been
as you said it,
a
I was
week,
like, all right,
there's been a week
wow.
separation between us, Jamie. It's good. You know, a bit of time apart is good for us.
We've cooled our heads a bit. You know, we've come back, we've reassessed, and we think we're going to give it another go. This whole podcast still.
Yeah.
Joining us on this wonderful experimental journey of conversations, all things VR gaming, are our members. Of course, I'm talking about Sampler19, who's new, and welcome. Hello. Stephen Reynolds, Captain Clutch, Jerome Richardson, James at Loud, Anthony Mann Mexford, Robert Canonas ×2, Handy Panama, Andrew Tech, Skiva 007, Sexy Bicycle, Mattia May, Rick Tet, 360 Pickable, Smash Reality, Adam Hartzell, and of course, John Westra. Thank you so much, week in, week out. Your support means the world to us.
I give that rating of the names, I reckon, about a 7.5 that time out of 10. You did pretty well there.
There was some stuttering.
Yeah,
you know,
a few hiccups.
I'm
waiting for the 10 out of 10 weeks.
How do people do this like all the time, like live on TV?
Like 8-hour Twitch streams too, where they're just like there reading out stuff and not going mental and not just tripping over their words. Because I couldn't do that.
I can't get rid of my and I feel like I do that all the time. I watch back my reviews and stuff. I'm like, I'm going all the time. Like the people that listen on podcasts, do you not hear me going and think, why am I listening to this?
Yeah, sorry about that, but you know, it's natural conversation. That's how it goes.
Yeah, that's it. That's when spontaneous spur of the moment stuff is happening.
Yeah.
What else can you do?
You know, when your mind goes into a little stopgap, you know, you just got to flow with it.
What's going on in your world at the moment in terms of VR? Maybe not, you know. What's happening in Australia? Congratulations on your new government.
Oh, thank you. It's so good. It's such a nice change. No, VR. I guess the only thing I would mention that I probably won't get to talk about more in depth now is the last Clockwinder. I played that like 2 weeks ago. It was kind of, I think, just before the episode we did before the showcase. So I haven't really got to give like a review on the podcast. I don't think we'll have time for it today, but safe to say, I really loved it. I thought it was really, really good.
Hit me with it now. Tell me.
Well, I just think it's amazing. I think it's a really smart. It's a bit of a automation game. It's like an automation puzzle game, and it sounds kind of like an odd concept, but I would really encourage people to try it. The idea is basically that you perform actions, record the actions in either 1, 2, or 4 second intervals as these robots, and you kind of act out what you're doing, and then you make these like supply chains that automate themselves. And it's this really amazing thing because you basically are collecting fruit or sticking fruit together in certain ways. And as you play through the game, all of the systems you build keep running for the whole game. So you look at this board and you go, oh my God, I have 20,000, orange fruit now because I've just been doing other stuff for the last 2 hours and they've still been doing it in a different room somewhere. So it's really cool. You kind of can chain these, you start trying to find the best ways to optimize this. Like, if you can get the exact right throw so that you can peg a fruit across the room and it lands perfectly in the disposal area, then you can save yourself like 2 robots. And there's achievements for using as little robots as possible. You can sometimes use 1 robot for 2 tasks if you do it right. It's such an interesting. Everyone can do different things. Everyone could approach the game differently. I just had so much fun with it. I've not stopped thinking about it since. I actually want to go back and redo areas because I was like, I've just been lazy in some areas. It's a really, really cool game, I think, and really opens up the creative part of your mind. So that's kind of the one that's been stuck with me.
Well, the thing is for me is like we've seen a few of this idea done in VR before, and the idea has never really stuck with me. But the way you're talking about it, about like going back and being more efficient every time, plus just looking at it on the screen now and just how gorgeous it is and how some of the stuff that's going on, like there was a character playing a harp up on the top level there,
Yeah.
for example. It seems like this is really taking the concept to the next level.
Oh, I think it is, and it's funny. I talked to a friend about it. I explained it to my friend, and he was like, "Is it one of those games that's meant to teach you about like game logic and how to program?" And I was like,
Mm,
"No, not really." But I can see why you
mm,
would think that because it's kind of like using things in that kind of way. But I think yeah, it is pushing the concept to the furthest, and I think it's easy to watch the trailer and be like, "That looks cool," but the feeling you get when there's like 20 robots on screen and you acted out all of them and they're
mm,
in this infinite loop that never stops and you've like got the most optimal or you finish it and you're like that's not good, I can do better than that, and then you
mm.
start erasing them and redoing certain actions to make it cleaner. There's a real I don't know, it's very cool because you could just be really lazy with it and use way too many robots and do it that way if you want to, or like me, I was like, no, I want to get this just right. And they introduce
Yeah,
different types of fruit too. There's these low gravity fruits that kind of always are rising up, so you have to tap them down, make sure they don't float to the roof. Man, it's just very cool, and I think it's a really good, short experience too. You could go back and play it again. There's definitely replayability like I wanna do, but it is probably about 3 or 4 hours total if you just wanna play through this kinda game,
yeah,
have it done with. So, yeah, and the story doesn't get in the way of the puzzles, which I really liked. It's there it's like often audio in the background. You can do everything while listening to the story. The story isn't, like, hugely anything. It's fine, but I liked that it wasn't like I was stopping the action to for these story elements, which is something that we've talked about, I think, a lot
yeah,
recently, where games have just like made you stand around and listen to something or whatever. Whereas this is very much like, no, you can always just be doing something and there happens to be
yeah,
story stuff playing
yeah.
in the background, which is nice. So yeah,
The
loved it. Fantastic.
the length thing seems really good because, like, especially with a puzzle game, if you
Yeah,
go on for too long, not only have you worn out the ideas
totally.
welcome, but you're also probably just doing artificial difficulty at that point, right? Like you're just
Yeah,
being really,
yeah,
really challenging for the sake of it. And I think
yeah,
that's always a big block for me as well as you get towards the end
yeah.
of a lot of puzzle games. So I
And
think I'm gonna go
and I
back to it.
think in that regard too, it has this very like it reminded me in structure a little bit of like Mario Odyssey in that the way that it uh gives you new elements constantly that you have to work in, but you're never like overwhelmed by them and you're never um kind of left doing the same thing over again. It's this
Mm,
perfect balance of like, oh, every level has one little bit that I have to now adjust to a new mechanic, a new way of having to do this, and it's constantly introducing little things, a bit like how in Odyssey you're constantly getting weird new things you can
mm,
chuck Cappy onto, and you're constantly adjusting how you play and learning new things, but the knowledge all kind of feeds into one big kind of, you know, your skill at the game, I guess. So
mm,
yeah, it's really interesting the way it can introduce things and you can be getting better on like a macro level, and then on a micro level you're still learning things, little adjustments to stuff and new mechanics. So yeah, I think it's really really smart. I think it's really cool and a lot of fun, and it performs amazingly on Quest, especially when there's like 20 robots all doing weird stuff. It just seems a bit like, I don't know how they kind of did it. It is all in one area, so that kind of makes sense. But I was kind of surprised at times at how well it performed, given kind of how many
yeah.
things I could spawn at once. So yeah, very very cool.
I wonder how it's sold. Like I this seems to be the case for a lot of VR games this year so far, but no matter how good they are, it seems like they don't generate much buzz. But
Mm,
I've seen a lot of people on Twitter with this one saying,
yeah,
actually, this one's a fair bit better than you'd
I've seen
expect.
it.
So,
I've seen people on Reddit as well being like, "Look at this." There was this amazing post on Reddit that was like getting a ticket through Oculus support. And they had made
mm,
this whole chain of like someone chucking something, someone dropping something, another robot picking it
oh
up,
my god,
another robot chucking it in the wrong direction. And it was like this most unoptimized like chain of 50 robots doing. So someone I'm sure in the comments will find that thread because that made me laugh. But it's funny too because there's that creative element of you can actually make like little scenes in it with the way you act out as
mm,
the robots and stuff. So yeah, very, very cool. Um yeah, I hope it's selling well. But yeah, as you say, it kind of feels like similar to other things we've seen. Who knows how
yeah.
much kind of, buzz that's generating and whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm definitely going to go and give it a go because from the way you're talking about it, it seems like maybe there's top 25 potential in this one.
I think so. I would personally think it,
Interesting.
yeah, it deserves a spot on there.
Interesting.
Yeah. The other
Cool.
thing I'll say about playing this, not related to this game, but while I was playing it, I played it for the first time with the experimental room setup, where I was
Mm,
in my lounge room and I'd mapped out where my TV was with the boxes, where my lounge was, and my piano and other stuff in the room. And man, that was the most comfortable way of playing a game I've played in ages. And I adjusted the sensitivity of when I was reaching out. So if I reached out towards the TV, it instantly kind of showed me the TV.
Oh,
Oh, it
nice.
was so much more comfortable than given I kind of have limited space, I really felt like I
Mm,
was aware of everything I was at all times and got so lost in it compared to other times where even when I have the net, it's the difference between being like, "Oh, that's a net," or, "Oh, that's the TV," or that object, and I can kinda still orientate
mm.
myself. That was great. I've even got it on now actually in my bedroom with, like, my dresser and bed and stuff. It's such a useful feature.
That's
So
really cool.
that's been very good to have around. I've been enjoying using that.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Let's get into the news, which, as you've probably guessed, is going to be a wrap up for last week's Upload VR showcase. Which, as Harry said, we didn't do a show last week just because we were all pretty tired by the end of it. But we're going to go over and cover some of our favorite reveals. Stick to just the new stuff so that you don't have to watch the whole showcase again, basically. And we'll go, yeah, pretty much in order of the way things went down. And let's start with our first reveal of the show, which was Broken Edge, the new game from Trebuchet, published by our sponsors at Fast Travel Games. And this is a multiplayer VR sword fighting game, kind of similar to Iron Lights. I think that's the first comparison that pretty
Yeah.
much everyone would have drawn seeing this. But it has this beautiful pastel kind of art style. I don't. We haven't like seen much gameplay yet, but I don't think it's focused on that kind of slower movements and breaking the swords like Iron
Mm.
Lights was. It seems like it's a bit more regularly
I
paced.
I get the impression that, like, it's gonna try and solve the same problem that Iron Lights did in a different way.
Mm,
Of
yeah,
like the no feedback, when you're fighting someone in VR with a sword, you don't hit anything
yeah,
actually. Because I think it looks like when you hit the sword, like, breaks off in half, and
yes,
so perhaps you can still use that part of the sword, whereas Iron Lights' way of doing it was you kind of took turns to block or defend and had to put it behind your back to recharge
yeah.
and so it feels like similar, but it feels like it'll be interesting to see how it pairs up with that because
I think
it's yeah.
I think we're the same. That Iron Lights is like was an inspired idea, but the flow of the game just never really clicked with me. It never really felt
I
very
think
convincing.
yeah, yeah, I was the
Um,
same.
and I think this, it would be nice to see if it's taken on board some of those lessons, and maybe it feels a bit more visceral and active, and like
Yeah, yeah,
convincing at the end of the day, right?
mm.
Because that's
I think
like
for me
that's the big thing missing.
yeah, I think for me, the Iron Lights thing was a bit like I really appreciated that it thought about the things it did and the way it tried to get around those problems, but playing it, I was like, "That I appreciate the effort, but I'm not sure that clicks for me in terms of, like, I
Mm,
would've if it were me making the game, I would've probably figured out some other kind of concept that doesn't have those innate problems instead of trying to almost like force it and come up with a solution. So I don't know.
mm.
I'm super interested to see what this is like because as you said, it does give me very big Iron Lights vibes, but different. So it'll be interesting if it has that same feeling of not quite clicking, or if
Yeah.
it does something to kind of get around that. I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's out in 2022, later this year. Looking forward to seeing what's
it's
coming from that one.
Quest and PCVR.
Yes, yeah, Question CVR.
Yeah,
That's basically kind of the theme for this showcase. That you probably
yeah,
noticed we didn't have much PSVR, and obviously we didn't have any PSVR two because you're not allowed to announce anything PSVR two wise at the
it
moment.
doesn't exist.
Thanks, Sony. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Um, so speaking of games that are coming to all major headsets but not officially announced for PlayStation VR, um, was our next game reveal, which was Final Fury, the new fighting game from Kluge, who of course did Synth Riders in the past. This is trying to tackle, again, like kind of similar to Broken Edge, really, in
Mm,
that it's a two-player arena fighting game, but this is much more of a kind of like standard beat 'em up. And it looks like the way they're going around that lack of feedback that we were talking about with Broken Edge and Iron Lights is you kind of punch targets on that like float in the air as kind of like a means of doing like gestures that initiate attacks, which seems like a really, really interesting
yeah.
idea. And I guess kind of
Uh,
like plays a bit to the Synth Riders thing of like
It
matching
does.
shapes and everything like that, right?
Yeah. And there seems to be that weird thing, it was about 10 seconds ago in the trailer where, like, almost went into like a third person view. And I'm not sure if that's the trailer or if that's what actually happens in game. But there was like
Mm,
a bit where the character lurches forward to actually hit the
mm,
opponent, and the camera kind of zoomed out as if you're going to watch the character you're embodying do that. I think that'd be kind of cool. I feel like we could do with a bit more experimental third person kind of stuff like that, where you
mm.
stay in the spot, but your character moves forward and does something. That kind of piqued my interest. Otherwise, I don't know. This one's an interesting one for me. I'm not sure
It's
how majorly it grabs me, like in terms of this target thing.
yeah.
It looks a bit like a fitness game,
Yeah, it does look a bit like a fitness game.
which I guess is like the Synth Riders thing, right? Yeah,
Yeah, and stylistically, it very much looks like Synth Riders as well.
yeah.
It's definitely one that I'm going to have to play because
Mm. It could
it
feel really good.
yeah, and it could also feel just
Yeah.
like not like a fighting game at all, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's the
it
important
could go
thing.
either way. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's nice to have a fighting game in VR, like a proper one. Obviously, people have tried it before, but it's always
Mm,
just been those kind of Unity asset flip,
yeah,
Street Fighter trying to be a clone sort of things. Because the difficulty of trying to put that genre in VR is this: it's not just that Street Fighter is a fighting game; it's a fighting game with complex button inputs that feed
yeah,
into a whole kind of level of strategy that each player adopts into their own fighting style, right? And
yeah.
you're taking away all of that complexity if you're just going for gesture based stuff. So it's going to be
Mm.
very interesting to see if why is there a cursor on the mouse in those shots? Was that in the showcase?
Oh,
Was that
wow.
just me? I had no idea.
No, look, that's gone, so I reckon that's
That's
in
the
the
f-
trailer.
that is the first time I'm seeing that. Anyway,
We're gonna have to check the trailer after the show if that's because that's gotta be just in the that can't be
that's
you,
really
I don't
strange.
think.
I didn't notice that in the. I don't think that was me. I didn't. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. I'm sure
There we
someone in the
go.
comments will go and check,
Spoilers
check for the
or
cursor.
outtakes for the showcase
Yeah.
there. But this is coming 2023 to all major platforms, so I'd imagine we'll see this a couple more times this year. We'll get probably some new fighters announced, and obviously like official
Mm,
platform announcements and stuff like that, which is cool. Again, it will be cool to see what else is coming to the game. I didn't think again that I didn't think the Tempest character really spoke to me, but this robot character looks way cooler.
yeah.
So
Thinking about it now, I'm watching this a few times, it's given me, it's reminding me a lot of, like, Zenith and those, like,
yep,
gesture-based kind of
yeah,
attacks,
true.
and I wonder how much depth you can get from that form of input in the same way you get the depth from a fighting game where you've got,
Mm,
button combos and directions and stuff,
yeah.
like, it's gonna be very hard to push it, and I imagine that's what people from fighting games want, so it'd be interesting to see how far you can push kind of directional gestures
Mm.
and where depending on how reliable it is and the variety of gestures and, different things you can do. I don't know, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's got a lot to prove, but I do think it's at least not looking like a
Yeah.
failed attempt straight away. So yeah,
Yes. Yes.
that's something positive about it.
Mhm.
Um, moving on, we'll talk about the next fully new game reveal from the show. This was Heli Squad Covert Operations, which is the new
Yeah.
game from the Warplanes people. We don't get a lot of reveals in the showcases that are just really cool, quick CG teasers.
Yeah,
So I
but
was
this
very
is a cool
happy that,
one.
yeah, this is exactly that. And I mean, it's one of those things where you just say, yeah, the people that made the Warplanes games doing a helicopter game, and you're
They're
like,
making a
yeah,
helicopter. I don't know why I'm so excited for this because it's not like I've played a lot of Warplanes. I played a bit of it, but I was just like,
mm.
"Yeah, Heli Squad." I think it's the name. Heli Squad.
It is
Get me in it,
very
and the CGI
Marvel.
trailer is very like, "Whoa, yeah."
Yeah,
It was very like, "Let's go." So I don't know. Yeah, looks
I
cool.
think, yeah, just take that formula, put it onto
Yep.
helicopters, and you're
Although
good.
it'll be interesting though because I feel like they get away with a lot visually with the other games because it's like set in the
Mm,
1900s.
mm.
They can kind of,
They didn't have
it's
very
not the
good
most
graphics back then.
realistic thing ever. Yeah, it's kind of like you can make it a bit like exactly like look a bit like painted almost like you're in like a
Yeah.
history kind of painting. Whereas this, immediately your mind goes to realistic kind of, especially with the
Yeah, I know what you
helicopter.
mean.
So where will that land? That'll be interesting because
My
yeah.
thing with the covert operations is we're probably gonna get, like, a much darker palette, like, a lot of missions set at night
Mm,
and stuff, right? And maybe
yeah.
that'll help it. Um,
It's
and
true.
also, I think Warplanes, has been a big success for them, and hopefully they can bring some of that back,
Beef
bring some
up.
of their expertise into it now, and try
Yeah,
and like make a
yeah.
visually richer package. Because I would like to
Mm,
see this have a more directed story campaign than the Warplanes games are kind
yeah.
of you get in there and it's more scenarios than missions, right?
It
Like
feels
it's
very
more
like a 90s or early 2000s game in the way the menu is structured and stuff.
yeah,
To me, it
exactly.
like scenario like Roller Coaster Tycoon. You're like, go to this area and accomplish this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're right. It'd be cool to get more of a campaign
Yeah.
proper.
So that's definitely what I'm hoping for from that one. No announcement on release date, but this one's coming to standalone platforms, including the Pico Neo, and
Ooh.
PC VR headsets as well. And again, just like everything else in the showcase, strong chance you might see it on certain other headsets releasing next year. uh,
Yeah.
Moving on, we have the trailer. This is one of my favorite trailers of the show.
Oh yeah.
Not a completely new reveal, but the mixed reality trailer reveal for Twilight Zone VR.
How good is this trailer?
This is really, really good. If you
I
remember,
think
Fun
it's
Train
so
obviously did Tarzan VR and did one of our favorite mixed reality trailers of all time, or not one of our favorite games of all time. But this is taking that same concept, so live action actors captured on green screen so that they're put in the game world, and we're seeing that there are 3 different chapters or episodes in this game that tell 3 different kind of Twilight Zone stories. And we get to see all manner of things, like from some stealth segments hiding from bad guys to being chased by monsters to visiting what looks like kind of a Matrix realm. And hopefully, this is hinting that this is going to be a very diverse experience
mm.
full of a lot of variety, which is what Twilight Zone is kind of all about,
I
right?
will say though,
Yeah.
all of them seem to have this gun and shooting at
I can't.
things.
I can't work out the gun. I can't work out if the gun belongs to one episode
No, I'm pretty
or
sure when I was writing an article on this, I was looking through it and I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure at least 2 of them have like basically a pistol and things floating
okay.
around. And I'm like, hmm, is it going to be like variety in environments, but we're just using
Yeah.
uh, a pistol to shoot things no matter where we are? Or is because I think what I really want from this, and I'll admit I've not seen like a huge amount of the Twilight Zone, I've seen bits and pieces, but what I want from this is every single one to feel like a little separate thing where I'm doing different,
Its own thing.
maybe
Yeah.
using the same mechanics, but feel like it's different enough that I'm doing different things and I'm not like I've just got a different setting, a different environment around me, and it's the same gameplay. That's what I feel like they're also
Because
trying to hint at, I think, too.
because conceptually it is a fantastic idea to take the
Yeah,
weirdness of the Twilight Zone and just how crazy that is, and then just have these 3 probably shorter bursts of
yeah,
gameplay where just anything can happen. So I
yeah.
do
I think that'd be so
yeah,
cool. I think,
yeah.
yeah,
I do understand the concern about like, is this just going to be 90% a shooter? Because I don't
yeah.
even mind if like a gun does show up in like every episode,
No,
so much as if there's still variety in what you're doing and the stories,
yeah.
and you're still getting these amazing only in VR experiences. But I do agree,
Uh,
like, yeah,
yeah. I'm just worried it's gonna be like, that you get the gun and there's always some floating enemy. It's like they gave a pitch to the writers because it's 3 different writers, right? And they were like,
yeah,
"Yep, you can do whatever you want, but there needs to be some form of floating enemy that you can shoot and a gun."
yeah,
And it's like, "That's what we're developing as a mechanic, and you get to do whatever you want within that."
and
And
Twilight Zone
so
probably wouldn't be very popular if every story ended with, and then they shot them.
yeah, exactly. So, but I let's assume it's not that because I feel like that's what we don't want it to be, and what hopefully it's not going to be. Then I think that's such a cool idea too that they could release more of these later down the line. Be like,
Mm,
episode 4 is here now, and it's a whole new environment, and there's new
yeah,
mechanics and a new thing, and it becomes this ongoing thing of just short kind of really unique experiences from different writers.
yeah,
I think it's also cool to highlight the writers of this stuff at like a bit like a TV show where you go, oh, and down the line you can be like, this guy's returning, or this
mm,
woman from this episode is writing the same one, and you can kind of have favorites. I like that as a concept because I feel like we
yeah.
don't really talk about
I
writers,
definitely feel
especially as
like
a
as a as a publisher, Fun Train has all these really fantastic ideas that are actually very true to VR. I mean, that clearly they're setting a precedent for great mixed reality trailers.
mm,
Like you're saying, this idea that you could have different like shorter VR experiences handled by different people with a greater
Yep.
variety of things happening in them. That is such a fantastic idea for VR itself. It's just the execution hasn't always been there. So obviously the famous one being that Tarzan had a lot of heart in it, but was just terrible,
A lot of
unfortunately.
heart is the perfect way to describe that game.
Yeah,
Like
basically.
a lot
A
of
very
heart. I
endearing
like that.
mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
With endearing gorillas that talk to you.
so that one's out next month on Quest 2, and actually that was announced with a PSVR version, so you'd have to assume that that's going to come later down the line, or maybe it's been switched to that other thing yet
I want
again.
to end this PSVR period we're in.
Yeah,
It's
I know.
really starting to.
Get me into next year, please.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next proper full game announcement, we had this kind of weird little lo-fi indie horror game called Liminal Phase. I'm a really big fan of this trailer just because it starts off in this kind of moody apartment. It's very psychological. You can see a character that's kind of struggling with their mental health, using the computer too much, ends up kind of falling into the computer. And then all of a sudden, there's these really weird egg-like
Yeah.
alien enemies, and you're like,
Yeah.
"What the heck is going on?" But you know, like it's a lo-fi thing. These guys did a game called Dum Dum VR like last year as well, which is actually visually a very impressive thing. So I think this is very much a stylistic choice.
Hmm.
And you know, it's cool. I want to see them do crazy psychological horror things in VR and create a
Yep.
really memorable experience, right?
Can you, because you're not traditionally a horror person, can you do like psychological horror? Like if it's not jump scaring you and it's just creepy
Yeah.
stuff, can you do
If you
that? You
tell
just can't
me
do the jump scares.
if you tell me like there's no jump scares in a horror game or whatever,
Yeah.
I would be like, yeah,
Yeah.
fine, I'll play.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's just
Actually, it's probably the same for me too. Actually, yeah.
yeah,
It's
I
more
can't
the
do the whole
yeah
anticipation,
things.
especially in VR.
Yeah. 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 No, that's
I
fair
chicken
enough.
out.
No, looks cool. Looks
Yep.
cool.
Yep. So that's another 2023 game. Steam VR. We'll
That's just
see.
Steam VR, yeah, isn't it? Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see.
no announcement for
Mm.
the Quest or the other one. Moving on, so we're kind of into the final stretch of trailers. Let's actually, before we get to that final stretch, let's look at the new trailer for Hellsweeper VR, which is made by Mixed Realms, I want to say is the name, who made Sorrento, and we announced at the showcase now to be published by Vertigo Games and also coming to Quest as well as Steam VR. Demonic action, arena-based action, taking the kind of fast-paced combat from Sorrento and giving it more of a kind of, I guess, Dark Souls, Demon Souls-y edge.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Uh,
say. Yeah.
yeah, with a heck of a lot of blood.
Yep. I'm guessing this isn't Quest 2 footage.
No, it says at the start it's like
PC or
pre-alpha
captured. Yeah,
PC footage.
yeah. Because
Yeah.
I hope it can look somewhat like this on Quest because I think it looks really cool. I worry about the seemingly dynamic or simulated blood stuff.
Mhm.
I feel like this is one of those games that could just have to be really chopped down to get it on Quests because it looks
Yeah.
quite kind of intense and complicated. But I hope not. I hope it looks really good because I think it looks amazing in this trailer.
It's kind of an interesting theme with Vertigo games on Quest 2, right? So far we've had Arizona Sunshine, After the Fall, and obviously
Yeah.
those are internally developed projects, but they both started before the Quest was a thing, and they were far too ambitious
Yeah.
for Quest, and the Quest versions ended up being quite like not like they functionally they were fine, but like visually they
Yeah,
were
but
definitely
yeah.
cut down.
Yeah.
And it seems like this could be the next case for that, but hopefully it's
Yep.
all moving
Hopefully
along
not.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Moving
Hopefully it
on,
looks wonderful.
speaking of games that are being jammed onto Quest, we have a trailer for Gambit, which is I've been thinking of this as kind of like a payday VR kind of deal, right? It's a 4-player
Yep.
co-op kind of heist-based shooter. We revealed a new trailer for the game that showed off this kind of train yard level. We still don't get like a huge glimpse of actual gameplay in this trailer, but you do get the sense that, 4 players are going to be running through the streets, taking on loads of different enemies. It's developed by the guys that did Zero Caliber, so we know there's some kind of precedent for this kind of level design from them in the first place. And it's got that payday kind of everyone wearing a mask for a bank heist,
Yeah,
very foul mouthed
yeah,
sensibility to it. And I think this is a good trailer, and I'm pretty excited about Gambit. I really
mm,
hope it lives up to its potential. Don't know about you.
yeah. This looks cool. I think the only thing I was going to wonder is, do you have to have 4 players? Do we know? Like, is it like you won't get
Don't
it?
know
You
yet.
won't be able to play a game. Yeah, that'd be interesting because I think that's the one thing I'm like. That's always
Yeah.
a hard ask if it's 4 or nothing basically. But hopefully not. But no, this looks fun and cool. Yeah,
I
I think
do
I like
think
the style. I love the style of the mask. Love the visuals. Like the visual style, not so much the
mm,
visuals game. But you know what I mean? Yeah.
I do think there's potential for because Zero Caliber came out on Quest as Zero Caliber Reloaded, and because it was like
Uh.
chopped and changed for content, there
Mhm.
was no crossplay. But I do think this time, with them both being developed in mind, there
Yeah.
is some potential
True.
for actual crossplay, which would help the 4 player situation if that's what we get.
Do
But
you?
I think that's such a high player count that I do think there'll probably be single player or AI based
Yeah.
options as
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
basically.
Do you think that we'll get crossplay between PSVR 2 and Quest 2 stuff eventually? Like when PSVR 2's
Yeah,
out, do you think they'll let that? You don't think
I
Sony
think that'll
or
happen.
Meta will be like, no, we are starting a new console war? Bad.
I don't
I
think
think they
so.
can't really do that, can they? 'Cause there's not really enough people. It feels like it'd be shooting themselves in the foot.
How bad? Yeah, how bad would it be if like Demio came out on PSVR 2, but they were like, but you
Oh,
can't play with Quest or PC
yeah,
or flat screen PC either. That would be a
yeah,
huge knock for that game.
mm,
So I don't really think they can afford to do that in the whole kind of
yeah,
VR ecosystem because you would
yeah, not
just
yet.
be splitting hairs on an already tiny audience.
Maybe in like 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Once
Yeah,
they've got their own user
yeah.
base, because I mean, obviously they're also doing the thing of bringing some of their games to PC these days anyway. So I'm still kind of holding out hope that we could see some like PSVR multiplayer efforts from Sony that
That'd
would
be
also be on
interesting.
PC and
And
stuff.
also, if we ever see like first generation PSVR stuff
Mm,
ported to PC that never came out on PC,
yeah,
for PC
I think
VR,
that has to
that'd be
happen.
interesting
Yeah,
if that even happens. Surely it might. Surely it must. That would make a lot of sense. I never thought about that, but yeah,
I
that'd be
could.
interesting to
Yeah,
see if that happens.
Blood and Truth has to come to Steam
Mm,
VR at some point. I think that's just
mm.
such a given. Moving on, we have one of my favorite game reveals in the showcase. What the Bat? This is
Oh,
from
this
the
looks so good.
developers. This is from the developers of What the Golf, which was basically a golf game where you did anything but golf. It took the physics and the idea, and then you had a bunch of crazy WarioWare style games. This is
Yeah.
the same thing, but you have 2 bats in your hand, and instead of playing baseball, you try and cook a fried breakfast,
I
or
love it.
you you try and
I'm
get
so
things
here for
out of
this.
a vending machine, or you pet a dog. I think it looks really, really good.
This looks so
Um,
much fun.
yeah, and it's one of the I think for both of us, it sits in that uh, area that Tentacular sat in, right? Of
Mm,
physics-driven craziness that can only really be done in VR, or can only be
yeah,
really be done well in VR.
yeah,
Which might seem silly and superficial, but actually you're getting these genuinely new, genuinely fun gameplay experiences
yeah.
out of it,
I
right?
wouldn't wanna I wouldn't I mean, I've not played What the Golf? Is it What the Golf? Is that the
Yeah,
first
it
one?
is What the
Yeah.
Golf. Yeah,
I haven't played that, but I can't, having not even seen any footage of that, but seeing this, I'm like, I can't imagine this looks like so VR to me, in terms of, like, all these weird actions you're doing. Like, I
yeah,
wouldn't wanna do
yeah,
this, on a flat screen. It just feels like so very visceral and stuff that I can act out. No, I think this looks really fun and great. I'll be playing this for sure. I'm interested to
yeah.
see if it's like, I don't know about what the Golf had. Have you played What the Golf?
No, I've never played it, but
No. So
it's yeah.
I'm interested to see if this has like a story or if it's like just gonna be, if there's like a
Mm,
campaign, or if it's like a more like a mini game situation where um you can unlock all the mini games and just pick which one you want to play or whatever, or if there's
yeah.
some kind of progression, how that'll, you know, play
I
out.
would
But
guess
either
if there
way,
was I would guess if there's a story, it's probably one of those things where like silly things happen in word bubbles with lots of
yeah.
memes,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
which is
It
fine.
would, to me, it'd be like virtual reality light
Yeah,
almost, like not as intense of a story, but similar kind of like oh, you're here and you've got bats for hands.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, or an
You know?
accounting
Yeah.
thing, right? Yeah, just like that, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is coming out this year. Again, PC, VR, and Quest 2. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing more from this one. Also, I think
Jamie,
one of the two games in the showcase
there was another cursor.
Oh, I saw it as well. I didn't want to bring it up. Just I need to go back and
No,
check
I
all
mean
these
it's here
trailers
now.
still.
Look, it's no,
I
you
swear,
don't. It's
I swear,
fine. No
none
one
of
even
that was in the
knows.
showcase.
No, I don't think it was. But also, I don't know. Maybe it was that you just didn't see it. Anyway,
Anyway,
sorry to bring it up.
I mean, it wouldn't have
your
been me if
cursor
it was
mistakes,
because we
but
didn't do any
no,
like
exactly,
screen
it wouldn't have
recording
been. I
for
reckon
it.
it's probably just gameplay footage that people have captured that they've got a cursor on it.
Yeah, to be fair, that is the hardest thing with VR. I do it all the time still. I think there's one in my Green Hill gameplay video from like last week.
Yeah.
So that's one or two games where indie developers that are starting to see VR as a potential place to actually make money, right? Like, so there's this, and there's the game we'll talk about momentarily. But I think that's a really interesting, cool theme for the showcase, which I think we're going to see grow even more as we do more of these. Certainly, I know, to be a bit of a tease, I know from some of the conversations we were having for reveals that didn't work out this time around, there are still some publishers out there that's like, oh, cool, you're getting into VR. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's cool.
We might as well talk
sign.
about the gameplay for Among Us VR because everyone's very excited for Among Us VR. This was cool. We got to see kind of more of a match this time around. We got to see a normal non-imposter player doing some tasks and then into the discussion with proximity-based voice chat. Everyone just kind of asking that player to make a decision and showing how you can kind of physically express yourself with the motion controllers, which I think is very, very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it is way past time we just knew the release date for this game.
Yeah.
And it was.
Do we not still? No, it says holiday. Do we know holiday? Did they say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think there wasn't that Steam database leak that was like, or not leak, but it was like they updated something.
It
around
said like November.
Before I think it was like December 17 from memory.
I think it changed twice, so I don't know.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, yeah. The more I look at this game, I'm like, this looks really cool. It's going to be absolutely, sorry to everyone that loves this game, it's going to be horrific to play though. This is going to be like VR chat, but worse. It's going to be like so many kids being like,
I will not be doing public games of this.
Like, I was a young gamer playing Minecraft in its heyday. I know what that's like. I don't begrudge people, but at this point in my life, I'm like, oh, this is going to be an experience to play.
Yeah, we are very fortunate though in that here at Upload we will be able to get like me, you, Ian, Kyle. Maybe we'll get some other people. David Heaney, I can only imagine, is the most vicious killer.
That would be the most to play with him, and then he'd be like talking about who did stuff. He'd have such a methodical memory of where everyone was.
I'd be more interested in when he's the imposter and how good he is at like keeping a straight face.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe he'll be in the game. I truly believe he'll be a fantastic killer.
Yeah. Probably, I can see that. Yeah.
I haven't thought about that, but I'm very excited to find out.
Again, this is 8 people normally, but I'm presuming you can play it with less. What's the minimum for this?
I think you can play. I think you can play 4. I think.
Yeah,
but that might not be a confirmed thing.
I think that's the. I think the original like PC or whatever console mobile was I think 4 or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So I presume it's the same.
One thing I am going to say about it, because I think everyone's thinking it. Visually, I think it's a bit of a letdown. I know it's running on Quest. And I know there's a kind of, indie lo-fi kind of effort to it. But like some of it does look a little fan-made at this point in time, I think.
Yeah, and it's also a lot of it looks very flat.
Yeah, some of the tasks and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
We'll see.
I mean, interesting because they've taken that original style and then you've applied it to a bigger, like immersive thing, and it's like it is accurate almost to how the original looks, but you then kind of go, oh, but this doesn't look as good in this medium in that way. Like probably, I think that's a fair call.
But we'll see how that goes.
And also, the kids aren't going to care.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, exactly. They didn't care about Gorilla Tag, did they? So
yeah, Man,
VR
Gorilla
chat, I
Tag.
guess.
Talk about visuals.
Moving on to our final reveal, which is the other indie developer I was talking about. Team 17 is in-house making its first VR game, and it's called Killer
Ooh.
Frequency. It's described as a kind of horror comedy game. You actually don't get this much from the trailer, but this actually sounds a lot like Area Man Lives, in that
Mm.
you are a radio DJ in a small local town. There's this killer on the loose. People are calling in, and you have to try and make the right calls to kind of lead them to safety, which I think is a
Yeah.
very, very cool concept for
Very cool.
a VR
Yep.
game. I didn't. Area Man Lives, as much as I wanted to champion that game, it just ended up being far too obscure and its puzzles being far
Mm.
too frustrating for me to even really get past the first hour of the game, which I think was a huge disappointment. I do want to go back and try it again at some point, but I really bounced off of it. So what I'm hoping is that Team 17 are able to bring a level of polish and clarity to
Yeah.
this version that actually gets me through it. Which is, yeah, I'm confident
I
that can happen.
I think that sounds really cool. I'm really excited. There is a part of me that wishes that Team 17's first VR game was a Worms VR game. That being said, the more I think about Worms in VR, I'm like, that would be so boring, just like standing around. Imagine you're like
Yeah.
a worm. You're just waiting for someone else to take their turn. It's like the opposite of what you want to do in VR. So
Yeah, exactly.
the Worms fan of me is like, no Worms. But then the logical part of me is like, that's a terrible idea unless they made significant changes.
Not to just turn this conversation into Worms VR, but you could there'd be some interesting ideas you could do with that. Like imagine if you were just waiting for your turn and it gave you like the rubber band and a like paddle or something like that.
Oh, you
Just
convinced me with that alone. That's good enough.
how cool would that
I
be?
would
Like
play
you
with the
just have a bunch of,
paddle. Yeah.
like you get a pinball machine out or something like that, just to do
And also
loads of
like the
different things.
destructible environment and being able to like teleport to
Oh yeah.
areas. Oh, and jetpack. Oh,
Why aren't they just making Worms in VR?
yeah. Come on, guys.
Come on now.
Maybe after this one. Maybe this is like
Yeah.
they're just getting used to how it works. Then they're pulling out the big guns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
let's hope for that. Yeah.
Team 17 coming this year to Quest 2, and it's coming to PC, but it's only flat screen on PC. It's not
Interesting.
it's not in VR. I feel like,
So
again,
do you think that
some
was a
money
PC
went.
thing first then, and they were like, well, we're gonna make it on Quest as well, or it
I
was
think
like
I've spoken to
in
them, and I think
tandem, or
VR was always a part of the equation. I think
yeah,
it's
right.
probably, I don't know this, but I think it's probably, Meta probably gave some money, and maybe it'll be, a couple more months or so before we see it on PC. Or again,
Yeah,
maybe
right.
they'll do the PC version when inevitably a PSVR 2 version comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much, I mean, that was like a very shortened Cliff Notes version of
Yep.
the UploadVR showcase. Really enjoyed it this year. I think we got a lot of cool, diverse announcements. And I think you can see the VR industry growing, both in terms of, now I was watching some reactions and people were saying that's kind of what they expected in terms of like the mid-tier
Yeah.
game developers that we're seeing grow. So your fast travel games, your Vertigo games, all of them were here, Kludge,
Mhm.
everything like that. And I do think that's where we operate with the showcase. We get to show, developers doing grassroots native VR work,
Yeah.
not so much the stuff that's controlled by the giant publishers.
Yeah.
Hopefully maybe we'll get to do some of that in the future.
I
But I
saw some
think we
people
get,
being like, "No GTA," and I was like, "Were you really expecting
yeah,
us to have GTA? And if it wasn't
I
in the
am not
Meta
Mark
one,
Zuckerberg.
yeah, sorry, we don't."
So
Zuck's got his
I'm
little
not an
finger
expert.
on that GTA trigger, and he's ready to pull it at
Yeah.
any time. Next
Yeah,
time the stock
exactly.
price drops,
Yeah,
be
and
like, send them the GTA trailer.
just ready to pull that out. Yeah, well, and I mean that's the thing about it. Like it's an interesting show to make because it's not like, I say this all the time. Again, I'm not Mark Zuckerberg. I can't walk up to one of the studios I own and be like, you have to prepare a 30-minute gameplay demo for this presentation in 6 months or something like that. We put out a lot of feelers very, very early on and work with studios that show a lot of interest straight away. And I think we get, even though we don't get this big, giant, bombastic showcase of what's next, I think we get a lot of really cool, diverse, interesting ideas that, even if not everything in the showcase speaks to everyone at all times, there's probably some, like a little something that's going to at least pique
Yeah,
your interest.
totally.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very proud of that one. I think it was a good show.
I feel like there was some more. There was you have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like there was more new game reveals in this one than the others. So was that? Am I
I think there
forgetting?
was. I think there.
Yeah,
I
it felt
think
like to me watching it at least that there was like, oh, there's quite a few new things here. Like I've not even seen
yeah.
anything of.
I think back in winter we had like Cities VR
Mm,
and
yeah.
the recipes game from Shell.
Oh, Lost Recipes.
Yeah, and a
Yeah,
couple of other things. I
yeah.
remember last summer, basically the only new game reveal we had was Nerf, um,
Mm,
and that was a tough year because again, all of this is dealing with COVID and
yeah.
the shifting
People are
timelines that
slowly
people have
feels
been.
like it's starting to get past those kind of delays now,
Yeah,
and having timelines for things properly again.
and I think this summer again that was kind of just generally a theme of all the different showcases going on, right? Like we had
Yeah.
Sony come out the gates with some really interesting, exciting reveals. We had some good stuff capped off with Xbox. We had a few things in the Jeff Keighley showcase, but overall, it's not like everyone was dropping these megaton announcements left, right, and center.
I I'm also gonna say, and this might be controversial to some, after trying to like remember which showcase was on when, like when the Microsoft one was, when this one was, bring back E3. Sorry,
Yeah.
look, so much more organized. Even though E3 is like the least organized thing in the world, it was still, even though they leaked my like all my details online 2 years ago in that massive data
Oh
breach.
God, yeah.
All the terrible E3 stories that we have. Um, Man, it's so much easier to keep track of things with that when it was all E3. There were things that happened that I was like, oh my god, of course. I almost like was not aware that things were happening. I was like, oh, tomorrow there's a Microsoft showcase.
Mm.
Like, oh man,
I
bring back
also,
E3.
I also just think next year, like if I was doing it again this year, I think I just would have, we would have aired a week earlier and just like avoided the whole mess of
Oh,
what's
like
going
the
on. Been
whole
like,
yeah,
look, we have a showcase a whole week earlier than everyone else.
yeah. Get in first.
But well, that's always it's always such a game of mind chess trying to work out where everyone else
Yeah,
is
because
going.
certain people don't announce things at certain times, and
Yeah,
yeah,
and even
yeah.
today, there's Capcom are doing a 10th anniversary stream for Dragon's Dogma, which starts,
Oh,
I kid you not, at the exact same time as Square Enix's Final Fantasy VII celebration. So there's two showcases on at the same time
yeah,
today.
yeah.
Ugh,
Bring back E3. Bring back
bring
E3.
back E3. Bring
Get
back
them all back
E3.
there. Get Nintendo back. There was no Nintendo stuff. Not
Yeah,
VR
that's
related,
true.
but
We
where's
miss you.
Nintendo? Get them back at E3. Get
We
Sony
miss
back.
you,
Get them all
dudes.
back. Yeah.
Let's move on from the showcase,
Mhm.
and we'll revisit that in December, no doubt. We have two more impressions and reviews for you today, both by me. It's been a busy, busy week, but starting off, we have the PC VR version of Green Hell, which I say enough about the showcase. Launched during the showcase, which is why we didn't get to a review last week. Far too much going on.
Mm.
So, if you don't know the deal with this, Green Hell VR was originally a flat screen game by Creepy Jar. A couple of years ago, a VR developer that does a lot of ports called Incuvo, who have done Layers of Fear and some other stuff, announced that they would be taking the IP and adapting it to VR. We ended up getting two versions. The first was the Quest version that came out in like April, I think I said. It was like a stripped back version of the main game. If you were watching the show at the time or reading UploadVR.com, you probably know I was very fond of it. I thought a lot of the concessions they made to the original game were very smart. Like the map wasn't as big and everything like that, but it helped it run on the headset and also helped you get like better, more native VR interactions into the experience as well. The PC VR version is like the full fat experience. So it's the original map. It's all the same structures that you could build in the original game. It's the full story. The only thing that's missing so far is the co-op, but that will be coming at a later date.
Mhm.
And then still working in some of those kind of like physical interactions. So you're still like taking axes to trees with like proper
Yeah.
swings or still doing proper combat and everything like that. Um, and I think there was there was a time I was playing this PC version, and I was thinking this is definitely an essential and everyone needs to play this. But now that I've played probably a good 10 to 12 hours of the whole game, I think I'm kind of more in the recommended camp because I
Right.
think between the two versions of the game,
There's like one version that should have been made.
no, I actually no, I don't think that's the case.
Okay.
I think the Quest version speaks to the audience of Quest very well. I think it makes a lot
Yeah.
of really, really smart choices. And I know that there's a lot of people that will have looked at the Quest version and been like, I don't want to play a version that's cut back or stripped back in
Mm.
any way. And I don't mind if some of the main intricacies, like the complex intricacies of the main game, are kind of like a bit more awkwardly jammed into the PC VR version. So I think
Yeah.
you get a very good native experience on Quest, and I think you get a still very immersive, but much more
Mm.
demanding and brutal, and in the right ways, frustrating experience on PC as well.
Yeah.
So the thing I kind of grasped from it the most was, man, walking around a jungle lost in VR is really like frustrating and hard and
Yeah.
annoying.
I can
It's kind of
imagine.
it's kind of meant to be, right? Like in some
Yeah.
senses.
Yeah.
You are meant to be getting lost. You are meant to be struggling to find your way and like then getting a horrible injury and watching your health slowly seep away. But I think in when you're playing the game on flat screen and you're just holding a stick forward to run past all this vegetation and stuff,
Yeah. It's not quite the same.
it's a far less tedious thing than
Yeah.
when you're in VR and there's just all these leaves and grass in your way. And I know people are going to be listening to this thinking, yeah, but that's
That's what
just
I
the
do it
VR
for.
experience. That's how it should be.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, I do get what you mean, but also it is just a fundamentally
It's
annoying thing as well.
Yeah. It sounds like to me when you play like a game on PC or a classic game that's been either ported to Quest or is like as like a mod, and you're
Yeah.
kind of running down these hallways that feel much longer than they
Yep.
do ever running, either because your speed is different or it's just you're in the hallway and you're like, oh, it's a lot longer to look at and physically go down than it is to just
Yep.
run with the stick. I think it's that same kind of, thing. It's a different the scale is different,
Yeah,
you can't
exactly.
have the same kind of scale when you're physically doing things. I think you've got to consider
And
that separately.
and it goes back to again the thing we always talk about with VR puzzle games of if you're stuck and you've been stuck for too long and you're wearing an uncomfortable
Yeah.
headset, you're just like, oh man, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
And I do think there's definitely an element of that to it. Having said that, the VR stuff also brings in a lot of really, really amazing stuff that you couldn't do in the Quest version. So my favorite thing to do in this version of the game is make a long spear, pick it up, hold it upside down so the sharp end is pointing at the ground, and go fishing. And you just
Mm,
stand in the water and you wait for fish to come near,
I can see how
and
that'd
then
be
you
fun.
stab.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just super. It's like super pure
Yeah.
VR, super different, like completely different from
And
trying to
and
do
one of
it
those
with a
interactions with
controller.
no feedback required, so it just feels
Yeah,
good to
exactly.
do, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
super convincing, super immersive, and you're just standing still as well. So you really are
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
there in
yeah.
the moment, and that's
If you
what.
move, do you scare the fish off and stuff? Like, is it
Yeah, yeah. If you're like, it's the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
with
that's
animals
cool.
in the
Yeah,
actual world as
yeah,
well. Like you can't get too close. So and
yeah.
it kind of works for that as well. Like you take a spear and like let's say you're going hunting for a capybara. You eat a lot of capybaras in this game. You got to like get a good throw and like an accurate throw and hit them with it.
Mm,
And that's kind of why the survival genre belongs in VR because there's a lot of pure physical interactions similar to
yeah,
what we saw in Song in
that's
the
true.
Smoke that I think are as we get more refined going further into it are just really going to speak to it. I remember there was a pretty popular GIF from like last year from one of those developers that post lots of cool VR experiments, and he was taking like a knife and just sharpening a stick in the jungle to like make a
Yeah.
weapon out of that. And you think, oh man, once we get to that kind of level of a survival game in VR, it's just going
Mhm.
to be such a cool
Especially
experience.
with feedback and, like, even if you have better haptics, so it, like, a bit like if you get the I imagine PSVR 2, the haptics might be
Yep.
really useful for that kind of stuff, where you feel
Yep.
like you've got, like, you know, more of a kind of sense of scraping along something, even
Yeah.
if it's not quite force feedback. Yeah, that'd be
Yeah.
really cool. Are you
So,
traditionally a survival game fan?
well, it depends on the kind of survival
Yeah.
game we are talking about. I like Green Hell a lot, and I like Subnautica and things like that a lot because they have stories and you can see them through.
Yeah.
to completion. I'm less of a fan, even though there's an element of the story in it. I'm less of a fan of something like The Forest, where everything's randomly generated straight
It's just
away.
like survive as long as you,
Yeah, it's more
will
like a
survive
last
for
man
long.
standing kind of
Yeah.
thing. I have
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
heck of a lot of appreciation for it, or Stranded is
Yeah.
another one that's like that. But to me, it's not gonna capture me for very long. Whereas
Yep.
where with this, I know I'm working
You're
through,
working through something.
yeah, and some objectives and things like that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm able to enjoy it a lot more. Having said that, if you do want the survive as long as possible thing, there is just a base
Yep.
survival mode in this, and that kind of goes into what the other thing I was going to say is, just because it is just the PC game, which we already knew was good and had, the systems and gameplay loop of a survival game down, you kind of already know that you've got like a very, once you've got the VR integration right, which they have done for the most part, you've also just got this long, enjoyable survival experience
Mm.
waiting for you, which I think is, like a rare thing. So there's that to enjoy about it as well. And also, just from a visual and performance perspective, definitely it doesn't run as well as I'd like, because it's just such a dense, complex world, and the crabs go crazy
Yeah.
sometimes. Um, and I think they could have done more to like remove some of the vegetation and some of like the unnecessary items to make that a less intense experience for sure.
Yeah.
But it's also a really, really gorgeous game, even on like the low settings. Like, in the morning when like sunlight is just starting to come through the trees, or like
Mm.
it's bouncing off a river at dusk or whatever. Really, really stunning to see. And I hope they keep chopping away at the performance and optimization so that it gets better. And it also really comes through in kind of the big thing with Green Hell is it's a real body horror game. Like you get cuts, like really deep, oozy cuts on your arm. You get
Yeah. Yeah.
leeches. You get like these horrible red blotchy rashes if you get like come into contact with bees or whatever. And it's just really sick and like a gory delight to see in VR.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to it. So I'm really impressed with both versions at the end of the day. I think they both have their merits. If you're going to ask me which one I'd want to play, certainly I think, not to make this a running theme in this podcast, but once they get a stable version of this running on PSVR 2, or they just, go back and make it completely stable on PC, that's the
Mm.
version I would want to play. But if I was handing it to, someone that I just knew loved Quest games and loved the pureness of that, because there is
Yeah.
some things like the crafting in the PC version takes the crafting from the flat screen. So you put a crafting table down and then you just put
Yeah.
two items on it. And it's like, okay, now just hold a button here and you
As
can
opposed to like
craft.
making stuff right on Quest,
Yeah,
but
like, yeah,
physically.
you had to push like a stone and a stick together, then you had to get a bit of rope and
Mm.
time round. Or if you were
Yeah.
making like a hut,
Is
you'd have to knock the
is that
things
because
in
there's more
place.
things to craft in PC and it's more complicated, so it's like it's more complicated than you could act out, or
I
it's
think it's
just a
I think it's they've always been, Incuvo's been very adamant that there's been two teams developing different versions of the game.
yeah, that's
And
what I'm trying to figure out. Does it feel like you're playing a whole different, like,
I
does it
think it
feel like
does.
there was a it doesn't feel like, does it feel like, they were making them together and then at some point they branched off and took different, or it
I
just
think
feels
it
like you've played two different games by two different teams?
I think they just had to have looked at it from the very, very start and said, "Look, there
Yeah.
is just no way this thing is going to run in any way,
That's
shape, or
such an
form
interesting approach.
in its on Quest." And what it reminds me of is like the days where, let's say Ubisoft releases a Rainbow Six game on PS3, but then it also releases the same named game on PSP, but you're actually getting an entirely different
Yeah.
campaign on the PSP
Yeah, it
because you
does
can't
remind me of
run
that.
the same thing.
Yeah.
And I
Or
think
like,
it's a very smart
yeah, like
approach.
Game Boy PS1 era
Yeah,
where you'd
exactly.
like Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, there's like 5 versions of that game on different
Yeah,
platforms, but
exactly.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, and you
true,
had
it's
all
very
these weird
interesting.
studios making them, like
Yeah.
contracted to make them and everything like that. And
Yeah.
sometimes they ended up being better than the full-blown PS1 product or whatever. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
so I hope we see more of it, to be honest with you. Like I would hope more developers are like, "Oh, well, we can do the full
It's
thing
super
on
interesting.
PC and PSVR too, but let's just,
Yeah.
let's get the core of it onto Quest in a way that doesn't sacrifice too much." Because, the Quest version of this game is easier, And I do think,
Mm.
again, as much as I enjoyed it and think the interactions are fantastic, I think a lot of survival hardcore gamer types would not like that about the Quest version.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you whatever your preference is, there's a version of Green Hell
Yeah.
VR for you, and I think
Yeah,
that's
which
a
is
very unique and
how
great thing.
lucky.
Yeah,
How
exactly,
lucky are
right?
Green
Like,
Hell fans.
and
You
yeah,
just
exactly, and how
pick your
weird because
poison. Yeah.
it must have been so expensive to do both this way, and who knows if they're going to see a
Yeah.
return on the PC version because it's just PC VR. So
Yeah. That's it's so interesting. It's such
yeah,
a yeah, wow. It's really a weird situation, but good.
so that's Green Hill VR. It's out now on PC VR. It's meant to be coming to PSVR in 2023, and I would assume that means that the PC version of the game gets a PSVR 2 port, but we'll see.
We'll
Uh,
see.
Yeah, moving on to our final topic and review of the day. I've also been playing Mothergunship Forge. Now, you might
Mm.
remember I was talking about this game a couple of months ago, and this is the
Yeah.
gameplay from that demo I've got on the screen here. It's a kind of wave shooter roguelite type thing where you go through different rooms, killing robots with like wrist mounted weapons. And as you die, like you collect currency. As you die, you might get permanent upgrades. But as you go through your run, you'll get like not permanent upgrades, just specific to that run, where you might get like new power ups for your gun. You might get different types of weapons. You might get health upgrades, everything like that. So if you've played Hades, if you've played Until
Yeah.
You Fall, anything like that, very much what you'd expect. The big draw with Mother Gunship Forge, and there is a flat screen Mother Gunship that started this whole concept, is that you actually kind of build the guns and weapons like Lego bricks almost. So you have these connectors that you attach to your kind of wrist mounted gauntlets that might have like 3 or 4 exit ports. You could put like a shotgun on the end of one of them. You could put like a pistol on the end of another one. They'll end up being at like different angles and different like or with different power-ups connected to them depending on how you arrange the connectors, and you end up getting these really zany crazy creations that get like just bigger and bigger the longer you survive in the game. And I know it's a wave shooter, and I know it might not be the most exciting, oh, this is what VR needs sort of thing, but I've just been having such a blast playing this.
Oh, it looks so
um
much fun.
It gets the core roguelite loop down. So like I played from a full battery down to flat last night
Yeah,
just
right.
because I was always ready and always up for another couple of rounds.
Yep.
Um and you go through a first area and then there's a boss. You get into a harder second area, but hopefully if you've had good luck on your run, you'll have built up a really powerful weapon that gets you further and further with greater ease basically. I I recorded the gameplay and I'll show it soon, but I basically built a gun last night that had 2 chain guns mounted to the front, then a grenade launcher at like a 45-degree angle, and like a rail gun at another 45-degree angle. And then
Amazing.
it was connected to a power up that sent like chain lightning through enemies on one side, and a power up that sent like acid mines into the environment on another side. And it was like built in this crazy, like convoluted, like terrible
Yeah.
design,
Yeah,
and I
mishmash
loved
kind
it.
of. Yeah. Yeah,
It
it's
was
very
the
cool.
coolest thing to wield ever. Like if I ever needed to use like the railgun for like an enemy with more health, I could just quickly like flick my wrist to the side and it would like shoot out in the
Yeah.
right direction. It's
It's very cool.
such it's such a cool, unique concept, and it works so well in VR. Um, the only thing I would say is I would have loved to have seen it lean more into that kind of multi-angle kind of gameplay, because really you can organize most weapons to just fire forwards if you've got like the right
Right.
connectors. But it would have been
Yeah.
cool to have like an ammo system that would have meant like, oh, my
360
front
degree
facing
kind
guns,
of.
yeah, my
Yeah.
front facing gun is not working right, so I'm gonna have to quickly switch over and point my ankle or my angle elbow. What do I mean? What's this?
Point
Wrist.
your wrist.
Yeah, point it over here and reach enemies that way. Like you said, like it would have been cool to have like a 360-degree option so that
Yeah.
maybe you're firing behind you at the same time and that's helping clear out
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
targets.
Yeah.
But it's not the most. genre-bending, amazing VR shooter out there. You know, like the mechanics
It's
of the
just
game
solid,
are
sounds
very
like.
casual, but it's just a
Yeah.
heck of a lot of fun,
Yeah.
basically.
Does it have a like endpoint? Like, is there a story a bit like like Hades or something where you're working through to get somewhere
No,
or get to a final boss, or it's like
there's you can complete the run, um,
right?
but it's very much one of the ones that's driven on complete the run multiple times, and you'll be
Yeah,
unlocking new starting things. You'll be unlocking
better,
new
better,
modes
better
like
stuff. Yeah,
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 like you'll eventually there's a nightmare mode which makes it way
right.
harder.
Yeah,
And then you can unlock things like start with, an extra health bar or start with
gotcha.
more ammo, everything like that. So it does. I think it like I said, I think it does the gameplay loop right in terms of I played for an hour just because I wanted to keep unlocking more stuff and getting way more stuff. Last night I played way more of the game than just an hour, but um,
Yeah.
I think it gets that core loop down really, really well. The one thing I haven't tried yet, and before I publish the review on Upload, is it also does have co-op support. So I need to play that,
Oh, yeah, cool.
which I'm really looking forward to trying out because that could again be another big game changer for it.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think it's just a fun, silly, fun game, and I know people might be a bit snooty about, oh, it's a wave shooter and oh, it's an indie F and everything like that. But I don't. I think it's just got such a great idea and it executes it so well. And I would, if
yeah.
you
It
like
could
VR
find its place. I
shooters,
feel like too on the Quest store. Like,
yeah,
I think there's
yeah,
a
for sure,
place for this. It's I
yeah,
think people. I often see games on the top selling whatever. I go, yeah, I'm not into that, but clearly people are, and I feel this is one of those kind of games where people who want this kind of game will appreciate that it is a solid version of a wave shooter with that kind of fun
yeah,
those new elements chucked in.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
that's out today, basically on Quest
fantastic.
and Steam VR. And if you're interested, if you've ever played Tower of Guns or the original Mother Gunship from Terrible Posture Games, I fully recommend you try it out because I think it's a lot of fun. And
Very
that I
cool.
think takes us to the end of this
Oh,
week, this
what
edition of
a
VR
what a
Gamescast.
what a run through we had there.
Yeah, we did. That was a very
That
recappy
was
episode, wasn't it?
it was, but man, there was lots of recap. We really got through that.
Yeah, we.
Bang for
I
buck
think
there.
yeah. There's a lot more to talk about. Like the new Zenith update is out today. There's a couple of new game announcements we didn't get to, but I'm looking forward to next week. We'll
Yeah,
dig into the nitty gritty, the minutiae again.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us on this journey this week. Of course, if you like the podcast, please do like, subscribe on YouTube, become a member like the guys we read out at the start. Go find us on Spotify or whatever. Listen there wherever you want to listen. We put this through a thing called Buzzsprout, which I then assume just puts it everywhere it needs to be.
Podcast
Um,
platforms,
yeah,
all of
around
them. I
around the
think
globe.
some of them. Yep,
Um,
it's in
Ian
places.
and Heaney will be back next week with a VR download. I'm not going to say Tuesday because they're currently talking about maybe switching it over for some announcements and some things like that. But we'll see what happens there.
Yep,
All right.
sounds
Thanks so much
good.
for stopping by. Thanks for being here, Harry.
Thanks, guys. No problem. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for having me. What a lovely episode that was.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.